This episode about the Ferdinand heavy tank destroyer was made possible by the free-to-play military vehicle combat online game War Thunder, which I enjoyed a bit too much, as you can see on the screenshot. And if you want to get a shot at me, use the link in the description for a free premium vehicle and a 3-day premium account, but more on this later. The immediate origin of the Ferdinand is interlinked with the development of the Panzerkampfwagen 6 Tiger. For the Tiger, both Henschel and Porsche provided prototypes. The one from Henschel ultimately became the Tiger, whereas the modified Porsche-Tiger's chassis would be used for the Ferdinand. This origin is reflected in some of the various names for this vehicle. Spielberger lists more than 20 different names that were used over the course of the war. To give just 3 examples: Sturmgeschütz 8,8 cm Kanone, auf Fahrgestell Tiger P. Assault gun 8.8 cm cannon on chassis Tiger P from December 1942, and Panzerjäger Tiger P, Tank Hunter Tiger P, used by an armor regulation from May 1943. According to Spielberger's list, the name Ferdinand first shows up in February 1943, namely Ferdinand für 8,8 cm Sturmgeschütz 43-1, 65 Tonnen auf Fahrgestell Tiger P1. Ferdinand for 8.8 cm Sturmgeschütz 43/1, 65 tons on chassis Tiger P1. The name Ferdinand was derived from Ferdinand Porsche, the engineer behind the Porsche-Tiger and the founder of the Porsche company. This was a rather untypical tank name. Although the many different names were not something unusual, general names for German tanks in Second World War are all over the place. You also notice that both Panzerjäger, tank destroyer, and Sturmgeschütz, assault gun, are used. This is due to the fact that originally it was designated as an assault gun and later was redesignated as a tank destroyer. Yet back to the origin of the Ferdinand. Generally it is said the existing 100 chassis for the Porsche-Tiger were converted in order to not waste them. Looking at the various sources, this is not necessarily incorrect, yet also a bit of an oversimplification. Michaels notes that the suggestion for the conversion in September 1942 came from the Minister for Arms and Munitions, Albert Speer, who knew that the Porsche-Tiger had many issues. Speer, who obviously took a cautious course toward Hitler in this matter, may therefore have been relieved when Hitler in the armament meeting on September 20 to 22, 1942 confirmed his prepared proposal that the Porsche-Tiger be partially used as an assault gun with a 200mm front armor and the long 8.8 cm gun worked through immediately, and that in the process the installation of the 21 cm mortar also be checked. It seems this was also related to Hitler's wish to have an assault gun rather sooner than later with the long-barreled 88mm gun, which could not be mounted in a regular Tiger without serious changes. Note that this gun would be used in the Königssieger, the Jagdpanzer and Nashorn. Additionally, Fröhlich notes in the context to this that the chassis were still in production and not finished. As such, it should have been possible to cancel or at least some of them. Since the Type 101 Porsche-Tiger was undergoing testing at the time, the Porsche-Tiger chassis already in production lent itself to this much needed heavy assault gun. Hence the statement that already built chassis were repurposed seems not completely correct. It likely was a combination of repurposing the Porsche-Tiger chassis that was still in production and getting an assault gun with a long-barreled 88mm gun as soon as possible. Sadly, I could not find any exact dates for the production run of the chassis. Anyway, of the 100 Porsche-Tiger chassis, 10 had been used for the Porsche-Tigers before the change in plans. Finally, in November 1942, the Henschel Tiger was ultimately selected and the 90 Porsche-Tiger chassis were redesignated to be converted to heavy assault guns. The first 5 Ferdinands were completed in the end of February 1943, the last in mid-May 1943. Let us take a closer look at the vehicle. For this we start with the armament. The gun was an 8.8 cm Pak 43/2 with a barrel length of 71, so 71 times the caliber was the length of the barrel. To put this in context, the regular Tiger had an 88mm with a barrel length of 56. As you can see, with the recoil system and guard, it took quite up some space. The total weight of the gun was around 2200 kg and the rate of fire was about 6 shots per minute. The positioning of the gun allowed the crew to have enough space and additionally also limited the amount the gun stuck out at the front. Fröhlich notes about the amount of ammo. The ammunition supply was stated differently in the documents. Once 50 8.8 cm shells were mentioned, then twice 12 cartridges and twice 18 cartridges in fixed holders, so 60 shells together. And finally 26 cartridges in fixed holders and 50 cartridges loose, so 76 shells together. In practice, the crew likely picked up the amount of ammunition quite individually. The regular armor-piercing shell was the Panzergranate 39/1. Its penetration values against armor at an impact angle of 90 degrees were as follows: 165 at 1000 meters and 139 mm at 2000 meters. For 1943, this meant it could basically penetrate any enemy tank at ease from the front at quite a distance. Yet even for 1944, this meant that medium tanks were toast if you take a look at the effective frontal armor values of various tanks that saw service in 1944. For 1945, including heavy tanks, you can see that the gun was still rather deadly. Speaking of armor, let's look at the armor next. The hull front armor of the Ferdinand consists of two armor plates, each with 100 mm, at angles of 81 and 60 degrees. The front of the superstructure had one armor plate with 200 mm at 70 degrees. The side of the hull had 80 mm at 90 degrees. The side of the superstructure had also 80 mm but was angled at 72 degrees. Even the back had 80 mm armor. The top had 30 mm armor, the bottom only had 20 mm, although in the front there was an additional 30 mm armor plate mounted on the bottom as well. In short, the frontal armor was extensive even by late war standards, and the side armor was similar in strength to the frontal armor of most medium tanks. The next aspect is mobility or lack thereof. The first thing you notice if we look inside the Ferdinand is that the engines are sitting in the center of the tank. This helped balance the weight, but also had a serious drawback, since the driver and radio man were not in direct contact with the commander or any other crew member. Also, access to the centrally located engine compartment was very limited. In addition, increased thermal stress on the assault gun crew had to be expected from the rising engine and generator heat. In a meeting in March 1943, some problems were discussed, namely that the maximum speed on the road would be 28 km per hour and in cross country 10 km per hour. Another issue was that the Ferdinand would dig itself in if a slope had more than 30 degrees or it was used on sandy soil. About the engine, well actually engines, two Maybach HL 120 TRM, which were also used in the Panzer III and IV. Yet in the Ferdinand these engines were used differently. They were connected to electrical generators. These powered two electrical engines at the rear of the vehicle that were directly connected to the final drives. Generally, these engines were well proven and matured. They usually had a lifetime of about 5,000 kilometers at the front, yet with the Ferdinand this dropped down to a mere 800 kilometers. Likely due to problems with air filtering and the continuous use at high speed to power the electrical generators. The production and introduction of the Ferdinand was rushed. Fröhlich notes that Hitler was aware of the limited operational readiness. Some wanted to fix various issues before sending the Ferdinand to the front, yet others disagreed. To give one example, the Secretary of the State in the Reich Ministry of Armaments and Munitions, Sauer, quoted the Minister of Armaments and Munitions, Albert Speer, rejecting the ongoing changes and stressing that more consideration had to be given to the production of the vehicles. Basically, 100 vehicles with 90% fulfilled requirements are better than only 30 vehicles with 100% fulfilled requirements. In agreement with General Guderian, it has been decided that the 90 vehicles can be deployed as soon as possible. In these 5 weeks, which is time until the delivery date, the maximum must be brought out. The Ferdinand was first used at the Battle of Kursk. According to Dr. Roman Töppel, 89 Ferdinands were sent to the front. They were organized in 2 battalions that were part of the Heavy Tank Destroyer Regiment 656, which also had a battalion of Sturmpanzer. As such, this regiment had a large amount of firepower to deal with tanks and infantry. Although after actual reports note that the absence of a machine gun was an issue, the gun has fully proven itself. The lack of a machine gun proved to be a disadvantage. To eliminate this disadvantage, 12 Panzerkampfwagen III were added to the Ferdinand for close protection and defeating live targets. Yet the claim that the Ferdinands were taken out by Soviet infantry with Molotov cocktails during the Battle of Kursk seems rather dubious. Karl Neuert, who at the time was a sergeant and gunner in a Ferdinand, later remembered, "I never witnessed any enemy soldier coming near our gun. Besides, the following infantry knew they had to protect us from such attacks." These statements are confirmed by Soviet records. On 15 July 1943, a Red Army Commission scrutinized the Ferdinand tank destroyers left behind by the Germans on the battlefield of Ponori. It concluded that some of them had indeed been set afire with Molotov cocktails. However, not by Soviet soldiers, but their own crews after the vehicle had been put out of action, either by mines or enemy fire, or because it had bogged down and could not be recovered. After the Battle of Kursk, a total of 21 Ferdinands were found by the Soviets. A further 20 Ferdinands were lost in the Soviet counteroffensive in July 1943. Following the experiences at the front, in September 1943, the Heavy Tank Destroyer Regiment provided a list of 31 important improvements. In December 1943, the surviving 48 Ferdinands were sent back to the factory for a complete overhaul. These modifications took place from January to March 1944 and saw various modifications, like changing of the ventilation grating, adding a machine gun operated by the radio man, adding a commander's cupola, and many others. Now, usually people note that the major oversight was the lack of a machine gun. Considering that the Ferdinand in 1943 used a gun that in 1945 still was up to scratch and was specifically designed to engage enemy tanks at long ranges, it is debatable how fundamental the lack of this machine gun was for the primary role. Especially considering that such a highly armored vehicle should not be left without any supporting troops that could deal with pesky infantry. Interestingly enough, a design from 30th November 1942 included a machine gun in the superstructure, yet not in the hull, where it was finally added during the overhaul. Yet this addition was rejected by the Heereswaffenamt, the Army Ordnance Department. As already mentioned, the Ferdinand had many names. Sometimes people note that the modified Ferdinand was renamed into Elefant. Yet Jentz and Doyle note that the name change was not related to the modification. On 29 November 1943, Hitler had suggested changing the name to Elefant. This was carried out by Army High Command orders dated 1st and 27th of February 1944. The name change had no connection whatsoever with the extensive modifications incorporated during the rebuild program. Fröhlich notes the reason for the name change is not known. Note that other vehicles were renamed as well, so this was not uncommon. To summarize, the Heavy Tank Destroyer Ferdinand was based on the chassis of the Porsche-Tiger. It was converted into a Sturmgeschütz with a long-barreled 88mm gun. Like the Panther, it was first operationally used at Kursk, and also had many teething problems. Unlike the Panther, no more were built after the initial production run of 90 in 1943. By winter 1943, only 48 had survived. Although the vehicle was heavy and rather clumsy, it still saw action in Italy in 1944. Although Italy might not have been the best terrain. Nevertheless, considering the situation, quite many survived, since later 31 were sent to the Eastern Front. In the final days of the war, the remaining 4 Ferdinands saw action south of Berlin in 1945, and 2 of those actually participated in the Battle of Berlin. Big thank you here to War Thunder for sponsoring this episode and providing in-game footage of the Ferdinand currently modeled in the game. War Thunder is free to play on PC, Xbox Series, PlayStation 5 and previous console generations. Simply download and play. It is fully cross-platform, so PC players can shoot down console players and the other way. War Thunder models in general aim to be visually as historically accurate as possible. One of the features I like most about War Thunder is that it has a game mode where air forces and ground forces fight in the same battles. And since they added ships a while ago, you can also try to dive bomb or torpedo ships as well. Additionally, there are various game modes that allow newcomers to the genre to learn the basics, whereas veterans can play harder game modes from the get-go. Furthermore, in total there are more than 1,700 vehicles models available to play with. And if you want to have a shot at me or with me, be sure to use the link in the description to get a free premium vehicle. Thank you to War Thunder for sponsoring this video. Thank you to Andrew for reviewing the script. As always, sources are listed in the description. Thank you for watching and see you next time.